Test. Test. Ooh. Streaming is now happening soon. Ooh.
bright lights here. Yeah. Lights are now wide awake.
It's warmer here than I expected. I mean, outside it's like...
Okay, we start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on this early morning after the evening of full activities, I believe. Thank you for being here. And my name is Katerina Makogon. I'm Communication Officer at Civil Rights Defenders, and I will be moderator of this session today. Our plenary session will be dedicated to the queer communities in Ukraine, which are, in the times of war and pressure and instability, is facing much more challenges and difficulties as ever before. And it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you our speakers today. So please meet Lenny Emson, Executive Director of EuroPride. Sofia Lapina, Director of Ukraine Pride. Falko Drossman, member of the Bundestag, speaker of the LGBTIQ plus rights in the SPD parliamentary group. And Dragana Todorovic, executive director of LC Euro-Central Asian Lesbian Community. We would like to start our session with a short film which was made by the Ukraine Pride NGO, and after that we will continue with the discussion.
Що може бути страшнішим, коли в тебе вже нікого нема? Не страшно загинути за Україну, але хотілося б за неї жити. Хоч які великі жертви, боротьба конечна. Ну, Маш, тобі має дуже фартанути, щоб снаряд потрапив саме в тебе. Більшість людей вбивають саме уламки. Уламки розлітаються під кутом 45 градусів. Коли чуєш свист, головне відразу лягти на землю, накрити руками голову.
Було страшно. Думав, тебе вже не побачу. Страшно і зараз, але з тобою не настільки.
А тільки повернемо Луганськ, повезу тебе знайомитись з татом. Ще трішки почекай.
Та набережна в моїй Ялті ідеально підійшла б для прайду. Перемога обов'язково буде наша, бо життя завжди переможе смерть.
Пам'ятаю тільки швидка, крик, лікаря. Реанімацію почали одразу, але не знали, наскільки глибоке поранення. Уламок потрапив у саме серце. Неможливо хлопець зробив. Як я тепер скажу його батькам, що я зробив усе можливе?
А готувати коктейлі Молотова не важче, ніж розливати коктейлі в барі. Рік тому я би не повірила. Змінити професію, щоб закінчити війну швидше.
Unfortunately, Pride is not available in many regions of the Europe and the world currently. And as I mentioned before, this film was made by the EuroPride NGO, and we have today Sofia representing the organization. And I would like Sofia to start and also others to continue and tell us about your work, first of all, and how did it change after 24th of February? Because on that day, lives of literally each of us and life of Europe and the world changed and is never going to be the same. So, Sofia, could you tell us a little bit what were you and your organization doing before and how your activities changed after the war started?
Hi everyone. First of all, thanks to organizers for inviting us. That's a big honor. And that's another opportunity to talk to your stage about the war and what is going on in Ukraine. So yeah, that's very important. So thank you very much. First of all, I want to remind you and everyone that war in Ukraine starts not just on 24th February, it starts 8 years ago in 2014. But on February 24, we faced it with a full invasion of Russia in Ukraine. During all of this period, like 8 years, LGBT community was involved in all of the society processes according to war. As you know, we have now we have a lot of open LGBT militaries in Ukraine. I can say that it can sound a little bit strange, but thanks to war and changes that we are facing right now, LGBT community get the chance to be more visible. Because now people in Ukraine, especially LGBT community, understands that they don't want to hide, they want to be open, they want to say about who they are, because now for them that's the question of life and death, and that's pretty understandable that people don't want to die without any possibility to talk about their life, about who they love, about their relationship, about their identity. So about Ukraine Pride, I can say like pretty much, because I don't want to take a lot of time. I think in discussion I will talk a little bit more, but I just can say that we are a pretty young organization. We were registered only 2 years ago, and obviously we work in a field of LGBT human rights protection and defend. We have two main fields. That's law field, where we're trying to protect LGBT community and fighting for our rights. And that's the movement field, where we position ourselves more as a queer movement. Because in this case, when we're talking about movement, we try even not to we try not to use terminology LGBT. We're trying to use term queer, because for us it's more important to unite people, especially heterosexual people or people who don't want to name themselves like somehow and to put themselves in some frames. We want to unite all progressive society near the issue of human rights. Yeah, so like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lenny, would you like to continue?
All right. So, hi everyone, and thank you for being here. So, all right, let's be honest, it's pretty early morning, so thank you for coming here and being with us, because for us, of course, you can imagine it's a very important topic. It's our life, right? So, sorry, I got a bit emotional because there was a sound of siren in the film, and it's very triggering. Unfortunately, kind of, yeah, thank you, Sophia, for talking before me, because like, it's not easy to cope sometimes. And we live like this already for 100, 200 in some days, right? So it's not easy. But there is a positive side. So, and what I want to present here today is this positive side. So after the 24th of February, a lot of things changed in Ukraine, and a lot of things changed in LGBTQI movement in Ukraine. I would say that we became united as never before. So organizations who were like, again, let's be honest here, you know this, right? Sometimes we compete with each other, sometimes we do not like each other. But in this situation, we all as one stood up together to protect our community and to form the system of help for LGBTQI community in Ukraine. And many organizations became now a points of humanitarian aid for LGBTQI community in the country. And many people, LGBTQI people, activists, they refused to leave the country. They decided to stay. They decided to stay and help the community. And unfortunately, kind of many of Western media would picture Ukrainian LGBTQI person, like average person, is the one that cannot or willing to leave the country. I cannot do this, like a victim of situation. It's not true. Absolutely not true. So in this 200 days, we showed to ourselves and to the world that we are not victims of the situation. We actually rolled the situation, we managed to build the system of help. So many Ukrainian organizations opened shelters for LGBTQI people. So we have right now kind of a chain of shelters in Kyiv city, in Dnipro, in Lviv, in Uzhgorod, in Chernivtsi. We send people kind of from shelter to find safe space. We help people with money, we'll help people with food. We help people with medication, specifically for trans and intersex people. This is a very, very hard question right now because there is a shortage of medications in Ukraine, as you can imagine, right? And we help people to come back on their feet. So, as you can imagine, economic situation is pretty difficult right now in the country. Many people lost their jobs exactly on 24th of February. They woke up to kind of being jobless. And many people lost their source of income within this 200 days of the full invasion of Russia into Ukraine. And right now, Ukrainian LGBT organizations opening programs of resocializing of LGBTQI people and helping them to gain new professions, to gain new skills, to find a way to earn money, to be independent, to be sustainable. So we built this system of help and support for our community without any help from the state, without any help from the big international organizations like that are kind of supposed to provide humanitarian aid. They provided, I don't know where, but not to the communities who are the most marginalized. So I would not probably name these organizations here, but I think this is a problem we need to talk about. So, and EuroPride is one of the LGBTQ organizations who is really helping our community to stand back on their feet. We have a shelter in Kyiv, and we provide help to LGBTQI in Kyiv and in Ukraine with food and with medications, and we work for visibility. And again, thank you, Belgrade, for having us here, because visibility is a big step forward for all of us. We need to be visible as the community, not only in the country, but beyond. We need to be visible, and we need the world to understand that if we want LGBT community in Ukraine and human rights in Ukraine to survive, so Ukraine needs to win. So that's why I always say, when we say support Ukraine, that means narrow it down to the community member, right? So support Ukraine means support this gay guy or trans person or lesbian person. So support Ukraine means support our community. Thank you.
Dragana, would you like to continue and tell us a little bit what were you doing before and if anything changed? I suppose it did in the work of your organization after February 24.
Yes, of course, many things changed. So I'm coming here as a representative of ELC, which is a lesbian network for Europe and Central Asia, a network of lesbian-led and lesbian-focused organizations, but also individuals. And just a note, we are using the term lesbian with an asterisk, which means that every time I say the word lesbian, we are actually inclusive of lesbian women, bisexual women, queer women, also non-binary persons, intersex persons, trans women who feel connected to the lesbian identity. It's our political choice to use this word because this word has been objectivized, sexualized, and also filled with negative meaning, both within our movement but also in the wider society. So just to make this clear. And we are not a humanitarian organization. We were never set up to be one. We are just a network similar to, for example, ILGA Europe or Transgender Europe, doing the usual things: international advocacy, capacity development, research, these kinds of things, re-granting to our member organizations. However, when the war started on the February 24th, I remember it very vividly. I woke up really early in the morning. I usually don't wake up that early. I was following closely international media to see what's going to happen. And when I saw on one of the channels, I think it was CNN, and when I heard the sirens, it was so triggering for me, as Lani was saying, because I come from here. I'm a Serbian national, and when NATO attacked Serbia in 1999, there were bombs falling for months. The first one fell just, I think, approximately 100 meters from my apartment. So when I heard the sirens, I could totally relate, at least to some extent, to what was going on in Ukraine and how people might have been feeling at that moment. And I knew that we need to do something. I knew that lesbians will have a difficult time, that they don't have the support systems within their family, within the state systems, within the traditional systems of support. And we just decided, so you asked me like what changed? Everything changed. From like a, traditional network business, we, transformed ourselves quickly into a humanitarian organization. 5 days after the war started, we were already on the Polish borders. We launched, of course, we were working with our member organizations, most notably Insight and Olena Shevchenko in Ukraine. And we launched an emergency number. We opened one safe house at the Polish border, then soon after the second one, the third one, the fourth one. We are currently operating 4 safe houses at the border with Ukraine, and we have been organizing pickups from the border. We have been organizing relocation of lesbians to other EU countries. It's also interesting that all of our safe houses were opened in the LGBT-free zones in Poland, so it's that southeast part of Poland, which we realized only like a few weeks later. We were like, oh, we are there. However, I mean, this is also important to say, we have not experienced any problem whatsoever with the local communities. They were so supportive. They knew exactly what we were doing, that we were trying to help lesbians move from Ukraine to someplace else. Everyone was so supportive, like in the local municipalities, in the medical centers, everywhere. Also, what's important to say is that apart from opening those safe houses, we also mobilized our membership in the EU member states. and asked them if they would be willing to host lesbians fleeing Ukraine. And as soon as we launched this call, in a matter of 1 or 2 days, almost 1,000 lesbian households registered to host lesbians. So we were hosting them in our safe houses temporarily until they are rested a little bit, until they know what they want to do next, where they want to do next. We were then matching them with lesbian households across European Union, and over the past several months, we've been able to help and relocate approximately 300 lesbians, their families, mothers, grandmothers, pets. We had all sorts of pets, from rats and cats and dogs to birds. Many of them also came with very difficult medical conditions, cancer. We had to deal with that as well. Soon after, we also started organizing humanitarian aid to 2 shelters in Ukraine, the one in Lviv, managed by Insight, and also the other one in Chernivtsi. And we were also providing different kinds of information for people who were our community members who were fleeing Ukraine. Of course, we were helping also other people who were coming our way, not only lesbians, but of course, most of them who sought our help were lesbians. So we somehow managed, like, we had to improvise. We had no idea what we were doing. We never did it before as an organization. We had no protocols, no rules, nothing. We just, sat in our cars and drove to Poland and organized all of this, I would say, very successfully. So I think that's really important to stress. Like, when there is a need, we just have to organize. We have to adapt. We have to work in solidarity for our communities, because if we don't help our communities, no one will. When we arrived at the border, we could see that it was total chaos. Like, it was disorganized. The international organizations were not there, the ones that were supposed to be there and that should be dealing with these humanitarian issues. They were not there. There was a huge risk of discrimination and victimization, of recloseting of our community in these routes, which is why we decided to provide safe routes, safe spaces, and safe measures for our community to go through this very difficult process in an environment that is supportive from the moment they cross the border until they are settled in one of the EU member states. So this is just for now, and then I can tell you more.
Thank you, Dragana. Falco, would you like to add from your side, because you're coming from a little bit different background, and
Yes.
How did your activities and your priorities change?
Yes, okay. First of all, thank you all for being here, and thank you for hosting the EuroPride this year. I'm very proud to be here and very proud to be invited, so thank you very much. And I will go for a walk on Saturday, definitely. Maybe you'll join me. And I mean, this question is very open. What has changed? Like, everything has changed, of course. I became a member of parliament last October, and I'm a member of the Defense Committee, and I'm the spokesman for the LGBTI matters, because we really have still some horrible laws in Germany which we have to change, and we want to do that with this new coalition. But the end of February, everything changed, and it was absolutely not understandable for anybody, because we thought through trade, through culture, through everything, something like that, like changing borders in Europe through military, would be a case that has been 100 years ago or 50 years ago. And to be honest, and I'm here as a politician, not as a member of the government, like, the war we already had in Ukraine was kind of a hidden war. It wasn't in the daily media anymore at all in the world. And Crimea, it wasn't in the media at all anywhere in the world after Russia took Crimea. And so everything changed. And well, being in the Defense Committee, we first had to see what will change for us in Europe, what will change for us in NATO, and all these different organizations. And we had to see that we really can't do anything. And I did a lot of tours. I went to Lithuania, I went to Estonia and to Poland, and we all saw that we really don't have the capabilities, like the military capabilities, to protect our countries. And that's why we spent, or why we made this decision to spend 100 billion euros. It's an amount I can't even imagine, on getting like modern military in Germany. And then it was, of course, the discussion, you all know that, how can we support Ukraine? And what can we do? And what do German weapons shooting on Russian soldiers mean? And Germany always had a problem with that because of its history and all that. And we always hid behind that history. Of course we did in the last years. And so this was a really big discussion in Germany. What can we do to support Ukraine? What can't we do? And this discussion is still going on. In addition to that, of course, we had more than 1 million Ukrainians come into Germany. And how do we take care for them? And I think we made it really good. We had a lot of discussions with more than 150,000 children, and we had a big discussion. It was a discussion actually within the Ukraine. Are they allowed to be taught in German, or do we have to find Ukrainian-speaking teachers? And in the end, the Ukrainian government decided that they should be taught in German, and then we had this big discussion, what are they allowed to be taught in school? If we talk about LGBTI matters, which are of course taught in schools, is that suitable for Ukrainian children? Then we had the big discussion with refugees that came a few years ago, because they really complained, why do Ukrainians get social welfare, why do they get free tickets? And I came from Syria, and I didn't get anything of that. So there was a big discussion, especially in my constituency, and we really had to talk a lot about that. In my constituency, I have a big group of Russian Germans who actually don't speak that good German, but they're all Germans, and they're really supportive for Putin. And they're loud in supporting Putin. In the beginning, we had these big demonstrations all over Germany, especially in Hamburg. You don't have these demonstrations now anymore, because people got used to what happens there. And that really is the big discussion at the moment. What can we do to support Ukraine? And I mean, the last point maybe is that we have a big fight going on at the moment, because, you know, in Germany, we had no effect of that war till now. Till the autumn, until the winter comes. There is no effect. And Germany really can cope with these people who came to find shelter. But now we have the problem with the gas, we have the problems with the power, and now it really reaches German households. And I got a lot of people who say, well, you know, if I can't use power anymore, if I don't have gas anymore, what do I have to do with that war over there? So as a politician, it's really hard, but it is something we have to do to convince people that we have to do something.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more, maybe, was there sort of activities to support LGBTI plus community that fled from Ukraine? Was there anything specific that was done by the German government or organizations that you know?
Yes, of course. I mean, the most of the people came by train to the big cities, like to Berlin, and we had a queer checkpoint there. Like, if you belong to that community, go to that checkpoint, and we had all these NGOs who supported them in different manners. We had problems, like I had two couples where one girl was Ukrainian and they lived in the Ukraine, and the other one had a Russian passport. And of course we couldn't send her back. So we had to find something, although she's Russian. It was enough with a Ukrainian passport to stay in the European Union, to stay in Germany, and we had to do a lot about that and find solutions. And well, I think that the German NGOs and the German LGBTIQ community really did a lot to support people from Ukraine. I know that there are some NGOs working in Ukraine trying to help. but I think it's not that many, because I mean it's a war going on there, and some people went to Ukraine and came back 2 days later because they didn't expect what's happening there.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to ask now, Sofia, because you mentioned that situation of LGBTI plus community changed a lot, of course, and how would you identify the main challenges that the community is facing now? How is it different from before? What has changed?
I can say that in general, like as community, we facing like the same problems as all of the people. But right now, I think that's one of the main challenge. It's how to communicate to society about your rights, because some of people and institutions, especially who are homophobic, trying to talk that that's not time to talk about gay rights, about your love or something, because it always was hard to explain people that that's not even about love or sex. That's about mortal rights, about family rights and other stuff. As community, we also facing challenge how to unite with, let's say, our enemies, maybe enemies, opponents, because during the war, like people start to understand that the question of life and death is like a little bit more important than maybe your ideological views. For example, as LGBT, as queer organization, EuroPride, we are working very close with, let's say, nationalistic initiatives who previously were identifying themselves as homophobic. But as an organization who were helping to community with money for food, for medicine, for rental and other stuff. In the beginning of the war, we started to understand that, that we need to help not only LGBT community, but to everyone who will address us. So we made an announcement that right now, everyone who needs help can address us. And so militaries who were protecting Azovstal, that's Azov battalion, they addressed us to help them with walkie-talkie and other technical stuff for militaries, and we didn't refuse them. We started to communicate. And I can say that even now we are working a lot and helping to families of death Azovstal soldiers, families with children, with old, with people in age, with their parents, and we're still communicating. And trying to help them. Not talking about like our ideological views or in which way we are different. We're trying to find the ways of communication and some topics and things in which we are the same, like as Ukrainians, as people who protecting like our own land. This thing is changing society in Ukraine like really strongly, because society starts to see that LGBT community like the same part of society as everyone. So that's a good thing, because now homophobia starts to be really pretty much not popular in Ukraine. And I think in the future we will face like more new challenges, but yeah, right now I think that the main question for us is how to find things what unite us, but not making us like different as Ukrainians. Thanks.
Thank you. And I would like to ask Lenny, as a person who is managing EuroPride and is for sure in contact with many organizations, many activists in Ukraine. As we all know, in February, a lot of members of community and activists have fled from Ukraine. How do they and how do members of your organization, how do you still manage to work to support community even from abroad?
Well, first of all, I will oppose the statement. Okay, so not many. We have a martial law in the country. Martial law will forbid all people with gender marker male in a passport to leave the country. People from 18 to 60 age, right? Now let's count this. How many people of our community belongs to this category? These are gay people, these are bisexual people, this is trans people, right? So the majority of the community is still in the country, right? And there are many people with female gender marker in the passports that just refuse to go. So we were offering people, so, okay, we'll relocate you. We have money for relocation. We will just send you abroad. We have shelters with partner organizations in Poland, in Hungary, in Slovakia, in Romania. So you like, please, just go. Everything is for you, right? So, but people refused to go. People wanted to stay with their country. People wanted to help, to be useful, to do something, to help their motherland to win, and to do something to support the community. We had like a tremendous amount of people who were addressing us, like knocking the door, like, I want to volunteer, please, let me do something. I want to do something for the community, right? So, and actually, this is kind of Ukrainian side, right? On the other side, we have a huge amount of emails and messages. Well, I'm not lying to you, I calculated this. Like, I personally got around 200 messages a day. I mean, emails and stuff, right? And like from partners, of course, but many of them were from community members from Europe, from Canada, from the US, from Israel. And these people, they were like sending this message. This is my address. Send your LGBTQI guys to me. I will just host them. I will give them food. I will give them accommodation. So we ran this big, huge database of all these addresses. And we sent people to all these people in countries of Europe, and kind of this is pretty much it, because Canada and the US at this moment were not available, well, as they are now. Well, and actually that was a huge support from community members. So I'm really grateful to partner organizations, right, to organizations who are helping us, like Parada Rovnoshi in Warsaw, like Lambda in Warsaw, like Kluj organization, like Accept in Romania, right? So many organizations helped us. But the response from community members, from like just regular people like you and me, right? That was huge. And we were relying on these community members because we were sending our people to them, right? And that was kind of a huge process that showed us that there is a community, LGBTQI community, that exists beyond borders. And we help each other and we support each other. And we actually are not dependent on state or like international funding that would kind of oblige us to follow some rules. We just trust each other and we help each other. And that's pretty much it. Right.
Okay, thank you. And since we're already talking about support and community, Dragana, you mentioned that you have seen big support from the local community in Poland. Do you think because of the situation, the people who fled and there was no discrimination and judgment, and the war and the situation made the general public change their opinion or attitude?
Well, in these local communities where we were, those are just like villages with a few thousand people living in there because we couldn't find anything else that we could afford. So they were just like some houses in the mountains and very remote in those LGBT-free zones. So they were, as I said, very welcoming, very kind. They were going above and beyond to help us in any way they could. Even, for example, private medical services, which are not part of the temporary protection measures that Poland was offering to Ukrainian refugees, were offered free of charge by them, and so many other things happened. So I think, in these times of crisis, there's a lot of solidarity that you might not expect. And I think this gives me hope that, not just within our community, but also broader, that we can change, attitudes of the general population who are supporting us. And I also wanted to connect to what Lenny was saying. That was also our experience, because we are a network of individuals as well. So we have several thousand of members. Many of them, they're not, most of them are not activists. And we were relying on them. So they were like just regular lesbians, I don't know, in Netherlands, in Spain, in Ireland, in Germany, teachers, real estate agents, regular lesbians living regular lives who just opened their doors. And that was so important, because out of those 300 lesbians that we managed to help and relocate to EU member states, most of them were going to lesbian households. However, we did have some who went through the usual system, state system, like state housing and the measures that were offered by the state. And what we were able to observe is that those refugees who were placed in lesbian households did much better, because the temporary protection measures in many of the EU countries are just not good enough. Collective housing is just for people of all sexual orientations. So of course, when a lesbian comes there and is surrounded by other Ukrainian people or other people who are fleeing from other countries like Syria and so on, they are exposed to discrimination and violence. The money that refugees are getting on weekly or monthly basis are nowhere near enough for any kind of decent living. Also, integration into the community, into the environment in these new countries is also something that has not been done properly in many of the countries. Of course, there are LGBT organizations in many of these countries who are trying to help, but most of this help has been very useful, but has been about providing legal aid, psychological aid, and these kinds of services, but not money that is needed for everyday living. So this is the difference that we saw. In lesbian households, lesbians that were hosting refugees, they really went above and beyond to share their resources, to share their living spaces, to share their earnings, to share everything with the refugees on a long-term basis. Of course, this cannot go forever, and I think now the important thing is to think about, the long-term solutions for refugees that are now across different EU member states and beyond. And our experience, because we are trying to keep in touch with them almost on a daily basis, like Lenny, I get messages, I don't know how many messages from all of them. These are just now our friends or family members even, and many of them have returned to Ukraine. They were there for a while, and they just wanted to come back and support the efforts in Ukraine. 90% of them were not activists before. But when they fled and when they saw the support that was available to them, they got connected to their, identity, I think, a little bit more, and became a little bit more proactive and I don't know how to say it, motivated to do something for the community, either in those EU member states or by returning to Ukraine. And something else that I wanted to say, and I should have said it at the beginning, is that I'm really glad that this panel is taking place here in Serbia, in Belgrade. As many of us know, and many of you know, Serbia is the only EU country that has not introduced sanctions to Russia, and as you may know, the overwhelming majority of the population supports the Russian invasion of Ukraine, unfortunately. But I also want to say that the Lgbti community in Serbia was instrumental in so many moments when it comes to supporting our efforts at the border. For example, at the beginning of the war, it was very hard to get medicine. Like, we were in Poland, you can't buy medicine without the prescription, there was no system in place. How do you do it? Olena Shevchenko was letting us know that we need trans-related medications, that we need different kinds of medications. There was a huge list that she has sent to me. I tried to get it, but because I was at the border, I was in the first shift over there. We were trying to get it. The pharmacies were denying all of this. And then we found a lesbian pharmacy owner here in Belgrade who provided all of this. I have no idea how she did it. And then we had to rely on the local lesbian community here in Belgrade to get it across the border, because Serbia is not in the EU. So all of these border checks, we had no paperwork, we had nothing. I mean, I think we could have been arrested, probably. So we had like 10, 15 cars who were crossing the border with smaller chunks of medicine just to cross the border. We collected all of that just across the border in Hungary, in a place called Szeged, where another lesbian helped us, who is from Szeged, to get this all together and then transport it to Poland. Also, a lot of resources in terms of financial resources were gathered here by the community in Serbia to support our efforts in Poland and Ukraine. So this is what I wanted to say. What the general population here thinks, or the government, that's not who we are. And that's why I think it's important that we talk about this here, right here in Belgrade.
Yeah, thank you very much. As always, solidarity is the key, and this is actually why we gathered here today in this panel, to find more ways to cooperate and to work with each other. In any case, 24th of February made each lives, as I've already mentioned before, changing, and unfortunately for no better. But in any case, we have mentioned today that there were also some things that we can, in a way, call good. There was solidarity, there was support, cooperation between organizations from Ukraine and in Europe. And one more thing that has recently happened is, as we know, a couple of months ago, President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, opened the door to legalizing same-sex unions. So there was a petition signed, and he sort of gave a positive answer. Unfortunately, because of the war, if I understand correctly, it cannot be adopted now. But do you think the situation that LGBT community is currently now in Ukraine has influenced and facilitated this process of legalizing same-sex unions? Would you like to comment anything? Or yes?
Yeah, so Zelensky did very good and very smart, right? But he wasn't the one who opened the door. The community was, right? So we were trying kind of to push on same-sex marriage at least for 5 years, right? So at least for 5. And I personally know like 3 bill projects on civil partnerships and same-sex marriages that were offered to our parliament to vote for, right? So it was kind of ongoing process. And then a community member, like Dragana said, not an activist at all, just a community member who probably was tired of being kind of rejected a basic right to marry. Just for you to understand, like, you know, from February to August of this year, so heterosexual population got married like 10 times more than for the same period last year. So heterosexual population, you know, in the times of war, when you realize that you can die tomorrow, right? You want to kind of do everything now. You want to be open now. You want to marry who you love now. You want to kind of, you know, do everything like before you die. Unfortunately, that's true. That's a psychological thing. And heteros can do this. Same-sex couples not, right? So, and some community member released this petition to the president, like, let us marry finally, please, all right? 25,000 people should sign the petition before the president looks into it, right? So if there are no 25,000 signatures, right, the president would not actually read it at all, right? So 25,000, I think this number was achieved like in few weeks, right? Yeah. 3 weeks. Right, yeah, 2-3 weeks, yeah. And the president should kind of look and make a decision, right? Of course, we cannot change now the main law, the constitution, because of the martial law in the country, right? But the president said, like, okay, no marriage, but we can do civil partnerships, right? And he kind of throws the ball to the parliament, and kind of now the parliament needs to, the session will be open soon in fall, and the parliament needs to look into it. And here, we very much rely on to European partners, right? Because we need some push and pressure from abroad. Kyiv Pride, together with All Out, we opened international petition for same-sex marriages and civil partnerships in Ukraine. And this petition itself already reached out 26,000 signatures, right? So, and now with this international petition, we'll be reaching out to the president, administration, and the parliament again, right? Well, but still, we would need some political support from abroad, right? And some community support, like in countries that would support Ukrainian member status in the EU, you know, so, and you as community members, if this is your country, and you can put a pressure on your government to support Ukrainian LGBTQI community and to support our efforts in getting equal rights in terms of marriage. So just do it, right? Organize a petition, write to your MP, go to your parliament, right? Do something. So kind of, you know, the more noise we have, the better will be the outcome.
And you wanted something from the political part, I guess, as Lenny mentioned.
Yes, I'm always the politician, it's okay. But in addition to that, I was the first German couple who got married 5 years ago, not me, my husband and me. And it, exactly as you said, it wasn't like a big movement or something. There was an LGBT activist who asked our former chancellor, Angela Merkel, in a TV show, well, what's about same-sex marriage? And she stood there and said, well, I don't know, I don't have anything against it. And then it came to Parliament 2 weeks later, and we had a slight majority for the same-sex marriage. And so I was able to get married on the 1st of October 5 years ago. So that's the way it happened. Like, you really have to put pressure by activists, confront politicians, confront ministers with that. But you have to be sure if you're married, if you go, for example, to Serbia, you know, my husband and me, and we've got the same name, they always ask us, "Oh, you're brothers." No, we are a couple. No, you're brothers. No, we are not. Yeah, because it's not accepted in Serbia yet. When it's a member of the European Union, it has to be accepted sooner or later. So really, we have to keep that pressure on. On the other hand, I need that advice. I, for myself, being a German parliamentarian, think that it's not on my part now to give advices to the Ukrainian government. You know, they need help at the moment, they need weapons, they need support, they need food, they need medicine. But do they really need my political advice? Well, you have to have same-sex marriage, support that. It's an honest question. Okay.
You would like to add something?
You know what? Yes. Why same-sex marriage right now, right? Yes, we need weapons, we need food, we need medications. And if my partner dies on a battlefield, I need the right to collect the body, right? I cannot do this if I'm not married to this person. If my partner dies, I need to have a right to bury the person. I don't have this right if I'm not married to them, okay? So if my partner is injured on a battlefield, on a front line, or as a civilian, and I need to make decisions for them, medical decisions at the hospital, I cannot do this if I'm not married to them.
I can do that, but what you said before I became a parliamentarian, I was an officer in the German forces, and I've been to 17 missions all over the world, and we had exactly the same problem. If something happened to me, even Germany would have said, well, no, you can't even visit him in hospital because you're not related to him. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So if we can support you with that, without being the superstitious Germans or Europeans, giving smart advices to the Ukrainian government, I would gladly support you in that.
Please do.
Please all do. Not only in Ukraine, but also in Serbia, in Europe, and many other countries in the world. When it comes to me, I think that human rights should always be priority for anything. I've seen a hand. We will have time for questions in 5 minutes, so we are coming to that. And the last thing that I would like to ask is probably going to be Eleni, because as far as I know, you cooperate with Kharkiv Pride a lot. So recently we learned that Kharkiv Pride is happening, starting from this week.
Unfortunately, I'm not in the right to comment on this, right? So we are kind of, we do not have a lot of information. Or we're really curious how our colleagues from Kharkiv are going to get around the martial law, because the mass gatherings are banned under the martial law. So, and we know that they announced the march, kind of the process of march in Kharkiv, right? So, and we all kind of waiting for the moment. We are in solidarity, we are in support, but like, you know, we respect their right to keep kind of the preparations in secret, because as Sophia said, we need to kind of get in terms with our opponents, but still they are opponents, and sometimes they want to LGBTQI community to be silent and not visible. So I can imagine that Kharkiv Pride wants to kind of keep secret to the last moment, not to let information flow, right, and not to give the opponents, the right radicals, a chance to cut off and to manipulate, right?
In any case, for me, it is beautiful and fascinating, especially because, as you know, 2 days ago, the march of EuroPride has been banned, and the main narrative that was going on around for weeks already is the security reasons. And for me, it's absolutely beautiful to see brave people of Kharkiv who are going to march under the strikes, under the bombs, attacks, and air sirens, while absolutely the most dangerous situation you can imagine now. And they are going to do it, and they are brave enough to do it, and hopefully they will have their march safe, while in Belgrade we are, as for now, still fighting for having a march for EuroPride. So there is live streaming, and I hope that maybe someone from Kharkiv Pride is watching it, so I would like that we give them a little bit of applause and for their braveness. And not only to Kharkiv Pride, but to all of the activists from Ukraine and from other countries who provided support and solidarity. Thank you very much for this. And we have a little bit of time for questions. I remember there was the first hand. Just please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, my name is Ivan. I come from Croatia, and I'm here as part of the delegation of PES and Rainbow Rose. This isn't a question, but more of a comment on the things that you've said about from Kiev Pride. You've said about why you insist on marriage and not on civil unions. I mean, it is the right. Just do it. Just do it. Insist on marriage. Be the first or maybe the second Slavic country that will introduce same-sex marriage. But Slavic countries are mostly innovative. We are many times super innovative because Croatia has a marriage ban in its constitution. But in our Civil Partnership Act, we define civil partners as a family. So if all goes wrong, insist that civil unions are recognized as family units. So you can, God forbid, bury your loved one or visit them in the hospital. Hopefully won't need it much. So yeah, there are ways of doing it. I mean, we have the constitutional ban, but basically our Life Partnership Act is equal to marriage in rights we can adopt also since a few months ago. So even this unfortunate part of the Constitution cannot stop you in achieving full rights. Okay, maybe just the name. So there are solutions. Let's stay in touch. Other activists from other countries can help you with it to have all what you deserve, and maybe leave the name for later if you need it, but insist on same-sex marriage, beat us all, and thank you for everything you are doing abroad in the battlefield here now. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Героям слава. Thank you. Here was you were in the second, please.
I keep hearing Kharkiv. I don't want to sound ignorant, but I just don't know what that is. Is it a place or something? The Kharkiv Pride March. Sorry.
Kharkiv is the second biggest city in Ukraine. Yeah. And Kharkiv Pride is the second second city after Kiev, who started to organize prides. Yes, and I've been honored to help them with the first Kharkiv Pride, with PR strategies and social medias. And Kharkiv is, we can fully say that Kharkiv Pride is very successful in case of LGBT activism in Ukraine. Yeah. So wishing only good luck to our colleagues and safety.
But the problem is that Kharkiv is constantly, every day, is shelled by Russians. Like every day, bombs are falling and exploding there. So this is makes the pride complicated in the city.
And it's very close to the border with Russia, if someone doesn't know. And it was one of the first areas to be attacked also the most, and it continues until nowadays. And that's why Kharkiv Pride is really act of bravery to plan it and to announce for the next week. More questions I have seen somewhere. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Marco from Germany. I have a question to our friends from Ukraine. You mentioned that right now the ideological differences are not in the foreground while the war, and that's what I also hear from my comrades and friends in Ukraine who are socialists and anarchists. They also tell me it's not in the foreground, the ideological differences. between different social groups. But you also mentioned that you are expecting more problems in future, and I would be interested, what do you expect? Which challenges do you expect in future for sexual and gender minorities in Ukraine? Because I'm quite sure that a strong nationalist dynamic and militarism and a strong polarization between East and West will in future actually produce lots of challenges for minorities in the Ukrainian society. So I would be really interested, what challenges are you expecting for the next months or years in the situations for LGBTs in Ukraine?
Who would like to answer?
As I said previously, war in Ukraine starts like not on February 24, but in 2014. And that's very interesting stuff because if you remember, there was a revolution of dignity, and like my opinion that LGBT community on that revolution of dignity lost their visibility. For that moment, I was not like activist or human rights defender. In case of LGBT rights, I started a little bit later, but during the Revolution of Dignity, Ukrainian LGBT activists community decided not to be like very visible in these processes. The position was that the idea of this position was like not to provoke pro-Russian groups on the topic of LGBT. And I think that we lost a lot at that time, but this time, during full innovation, LGBT community was, and right now LGBT community are very visible. The topic of LGBT militaries is one of the most popular right now, and that's the option that helps us to communicate our rights, especially that's the option that help us to get support from not LGBT people, because obviously we need to understand that the petition that was supported with 25 or even more thousand of voices, that's obviously not only LGBTQI people. During that time, during the Revolution of Dignity, the most visible part of society was far rights and nationalists, because they started their revolution. And after this revolution, they get, let's say, monopoly on their voice. And they was like very aggressive to LGBT community, but they get this monopoly as they were like heroes. They started the Revolution of Dignity, and they their idea was and their communication was like, we started the Revolution of Dignity. There were no any LGBT people. There were no any gays and other stuff. But during this time, they can't say that LGBT community not involved in the processes, because now LGBT community are like very visible in this process. And I think that far rights, especially who are we have very hard situation in Ukraine, because some far rights are supported by Russian, let's say, Russian initiatives. Як сказати зрадники? Yeah, they betrayers, yeah, of the Ukraine, and they using this Russian idea of homophobic Ukraine. So after the war, when we will win, that's gonna be anyway a little bit I think that will be ideological war of far initiatives in Ukraine and about LGBT community. But I think anyway that's going to be not that strong as it was after Revolution of Dignity, because now LGBT community are more visible, as I said previously. So let's see what's going to happen, but I think now we are more prepared anyway.
Let's say that we have one more question, maximum two, and we are slowly closing up our session. Can you please?
Thank you for the wonderful dialogue. My name is Kevin. I'm here from Toronto, Canada, and with EuroPride. And it's amazing to me to hear our Ukrainian activist friends speak about your communities almost in the third person. You're telling us about lesbians, gay men, transgender people, and the support they need and the support they're receiving or not receiving. But it's completely heroic to me to hear that from you, because you yourselves are in this situation as well. You're in the middle of a war, you're in the middle of a crisis, and I'm just wondering, how are you and your colleagues, your activist colleagues who aren't on the stage, doing yourselves? Are you getting the support that you need from your colleagues, our colleagues around the world, and internally in Ukraine? How is the community of activists doing? How are you holding up?
Well, probably I will start with that, because it's a complicated issue, you know, kind of it's a lot behind, and we try to take care of each other, right? And like we were like almost for 6 months working like nonstop, 24 hours a day, right? Because kind of we work with the community requests, which is kind of day and night, as you can imagine, right? And we work with donors and reporting and stuff. Like, by the way, I think probably many of you in the audience will understand me. It's very funny when the donor asks you for a report and your accountant is in a bomb shelter right now, you know? And like, you know, but the donor would not understand it because they sit in somewhere in Washington and they don't see it, right? So, and kind of this adds to stress, right? Because you are stressed. On one hand, you hear the siren, you heard it in the film, right? This howling sound that makes you kind of paralyzed, right? And you understand that all people, they want to go in a bomb shelter. They don't want to sit, you know, on a 5th floor and write down a report, you know? But on the other hand, you have this pressure, internal and external pressure, right? So, and then we kind of decided that we need psychological supports. From the day one, from the 25th of February, right, the day after the night, when it started, right, we had organized community support groups with psychologists, volunteer psychologists who would run these community support groups online every day. So, and at some point we understood that we need the same for the team. And for EuroPride team, we have our psychologist, a supervisor who would supervise like once in 2 weeks, right, supervise the team and talk to people and try to kind of, you know, give advice, give help, give support, right? So this is pretty much what we do for our well-being. And I'm just, you know, I would like take this opportunity to thank all the volunteer psychologists that would work with us and help the community. We had psychologists from Ukraine, from Germany, from the US, I mean, Ukrainian-speaking people, right, who live there for years, right? Well, but like this support was tremendous, and we got so many volunteers who just came to us and said, like, we want to do this, we want to help the community, we want to support you because we understand how not easy it is, right? So, and that's just, you know, I want probably, if you have this courage in you, please just give them a round of applause right now. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and 1.5 hours is definitely not enough to share all of our stories and ask all questions we are wondering about. That's why I would like to slowly wrap up our session and ask you one more time if you have any closing message you would like to send to the community in Ukraine, to the European community, what we can do and how we can support everyone at these difficult times. I would like that all of us take 1 minute shortly to say our final message to people whom we need support and people who need our support as never before. Would you like to start maybe? Yes.
Okay, 1 minute. I think the biggest danger is that we get used to that war at the moment in the European states, and we have to we can't this war be forgotten, and that's why it is so important that we do these discussions. I'm really admiring your work for the last month, especially on social media, where I'm following you, and we really have to show that people dying there every day within Europe.
Thank you.
Well, my closing message is similar. From my work and from my experience recently, I've seen that there is a fatigue or some kind of a getting used to the war. And when you talk to different civil society organizations or state authorities, the donors as well, you can see that this support is slowly winding down in a way. And this is something that we should not let happen. Unfortunately, from what we are able to see, the war will continue for maybe longer than anyone expected. And long-term support now is needed more than ever, and also planning for the support after the war ends and after Ukraine wins.
Thank you very much for this, Ragnar. Yeah, you really understand the situation because, yes, we would need more support right now, and specifically when the war comes to end, because like economic crisis is still there, right? Well, and when we talk about supporting Ukraine, when we talk about supporting LGBTQI community, I just want you to think of the numbers. Like 8 million people left Ukraine. That means that 38 million are still in the country. And 10% of the population are LGBTQI people, right? We know this. 10% of 38 million people. So how many LGBTQI people are still in Ukraine, are still needing your help, are still needing your support? So we must not forget of those LGBTQI people who are in the country. So, you know, from Canada, from the US, from Europe, right, the most visible members of LGBTQI community are refugees. But we want you to see kind of further and beyond, and we want you to see the community that is in Ukraine, and that needs help, and that needs support. And I mean kind of not only financial support, just, you know, recognizing that we are there, that we are fighting, that we are in the military, that we are volunteering, and we deserve respect and recognition. That would be a big support as well. So just see us, just understand that we are there, and make us visible, and give us solidarity. That would be a huge support for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I want to ask you, if you want to be useful for Ukrainians and for Ukraine, please try to avoid this message like anti-war, like you are against the war. Because this position is like really ridiculous. Being anti-war, that's like not proactive position. You need to judge the occupator, and you need to help and be useful to Ukraine, which is protecting their lands and lives. So saying like I against the war, that's like not really useful message. Try to explain and to open like this topic why you support Ukraine and why Ukraine needs more help, like AIDS, medicine, weapon, and other stuff. Because in this case, that's always like two sides: side who is aggression and aggressor, and side who trying to protect. So anti-war message is like really not a good position to help in this case. Yeah, if you stand for freedom, stand for Ukraine, please. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And from my side, I would say huge thank you to each of you for literally every minute that you spent trying to help and doing maximum everything that you can and doing your best. And to everyone, I just want to wish one thing, that I hope that next year all of us are meeting at Kyiv Pride or Kharkiv Pride or any other pride in a peaceful Ukraine. So thank you very much, and we continue support and we continue our cooperation and communication. Thank you. See you in Ukraine.
muted that, right?
Mhm. Okay, let's get started with this panel. How can we find ways for more companies to step forward and support the LGBTI plus community? This is what we should talk about today in this panel, and something that we will discuss with this amazing panel. My name is Anna Magnard, and I work at Civil Rights Defenders usually, also to build partnership between corporate side and civil society side. And so I'm super excited to see where this conversation will lead today. Before we start, think of turning off the phones. And then I will also try to get one of our panelists online. I hope it works. My ambition today is that we will get inspired to act and do more. I hope there are many companies here that could bring good examples with them, but also for us as activists to bring with us good examples and good tips to get started. So, there's quite an amazing panel, I must say, and I'm happy that there are so many interesting people with lots of experience and good expertise on this topic. Starting here with Minister of Trade, Tourism and Telecommunications, Tatjana Matic, welcome. We have Marijn Pijnenberg, who is Business Development Executive and Marketplace Diversity Leader at IBM. Next is Katarina Erogova, who is CEO of Ikea, Southeast Europe. And George Kopalishvili, Head of Digital and Events Marketing at Microsoft, Central and Eastern Europe, and also Worldwide Policy Director at Gleam. We will hear more about that. And last but not least, but not last, last here is Anna Kasprak, Vice President, Central and Eastern Europe at Medtronic. Warm welcome. And hopefully now we will have Alex online. And you are online. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Hi.
Alex Black is Marketing Director at Grindr. Many of you are also sponsors to EuroPride, so it will be interesting to learn more about how that come about. So I will start turning to you, Ekaterina. Ikea was the first company in Serbia to raise the rainbow flag, something that we as civil society thought was quite amazing. You got lots of applause from us, but you also got security threats and other reactions from others. But in your role as CEO and Chief Sustainability Officer at Ikea, you have been working with these issues for a long time. Please tell us a little bit how it started and how you worked with inclusion, before you raised that flag.
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me good? Okay. I have a bit of emotion to that topic. I think that, today it's so much encouragement around diversity and inclusion strategy, and that we are all together discussing this. And I would like to point out maybe 3 things out of, first of all, what is our standpoint for IKEA, and then secondly, it's about our Serbian journey, and where we are having some struggles, but also some learnings, but also a lot of positive energy as well, and then also, okay, what could be these encouragements? If you're coming back to the first, IKEA is always about to make a better everyday life for the many people, and there's many people who we are. I think it's all of us included here. And I think that it doesn't matter around gender, around sexual orientation, religion, or any other thing, that I think we are all devoted to be equal treat and also have equal possibilities. We are really believer of that in IKEA. And I think this is a kind of standpoint for us. And this is so much important. But then if you go for other things also, and if we are going to the second thing, it's around our Serbian journey. And I know that some Serbian colleagues also today here in the room as well, but it was a challenging journey for all of us. But then it was about co-workers, and it was about how actually we can be all together and do understand about why and about what is our standing point, and how we can really engage with so many people around that topic. And I think that it's so much important and that's why we engaged a lot, and we did a lot of things and workshops around, and try to get this. Is it really what we are standing for, and why? And then we also thought that, okay, we need to get a bit of more competence, and we need to get a bit of more understanding of NGOs and what is actually the qualities. And that's why we did this as well, to invite the civil society to support us. And then it was also a lot of around the HOT, our great campaign also, and also to understand to our people why we do that, and what is the main things to go. And I think that it was so important to also celebrate that with our co-workers, that they understand also why IKEA have this standpoint as well. And then what is very important for us last year, we understood that actually we are ready. We are ready to get these, steps to make it going in Serbia. And coming to your question also, like, okay, what we have been done, we was really doing a lot of activities during this period of time, and it was celebrating the hot, but it was also a lot around adequate, the equal rules for partners for adoption. We put the flag in the entrance of our Ikea store. We did a lot of activities externally, and we are very proud about that. And then we got different, you can say, reaction from media. It was, from one way, it was from the bomb threat and also stolen our flag from the entrance of IKEA store, but also admiration of our co-workers around how we stand up, and also how they are proud about environment that we are in, and that we are brave enough to make this happening. Mm-hmm. And that's why we just thought that it's great that we can go in for this year as well on that, if to talk about the Serbia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will come back to that later. Turning to you, George, Microsoft, you're head of digital and events marketing, and also worldwide policy director at Gleam. I found that a super interesting combination of roles. You told me that you've been working with something that you call the embassy model at Microsoft. Please tell us a little bit more about that, what that is, and also what Gleam do, because it's quite a cool thing, I think.
Thank you, and thank you for having us here. Thank you for organizing the event. It's a great pleasure to be here. So my day job is indeed marketing. I serve many companies, and probably most of you are using our products. But my second job, which is not paid, is this internal activism, which we call Gleam. It's an employee resource group, ERG, which is the formal organization at Microsoft, and we have many of those. I'm part of the global board, and my job is to look after the policy. So we are trying to make sure that whatever policies, internal policies Microsoft has for their employees, we are looking at them from the LGBTQI perspective and trying to make sure that they align to the rest of the population, rest of the employees. Now, my vision for the organization, or the reason why I'm there, is because we are so different. Microsoft is the big American company. It's always been driven by what's happening in America, and we have a super big office there. And this is what unites us: the products we sell, the vision we have as the company. But where we're different is the context where we work, the countries where we operate. And this is driven by culture, by politics, by history, by heritage, by many, many, many things. Now, what we are trying to do in Gleam is to make sure that company understands that and adjust the policies towards the environment, towards the people we operate. And this is where the embassy model is coming in place. It's not a formal framework. And actually, you can learn about the embassy model reading the work by Kenji Yoshino. He's the law professor at the New York University. And this is the framework he created several years ago, thinking of how corporate can embrace the diversity agenda. He basically says that there are 3 levels of how can you do that. The first layer says if the environment where company is operating is not really friendly from the government perspective, from the legal perspective, try to make sure that you ensure basic rights for your employees. Don't go outside, don't advocate, just make sure that your employees are safe in your office and do the most for them. The second layer, what we call an embassy model, is a bit more advanced of that, but we say whenever an employee is joining Microsoft, inside of our walls, inside of our office, they can be whoever they are. You can bring your ideas, you can bring your personality, you can bring your beliefs, and that will be well accepted and appreciated by the organization. And then the third layer, and this is where we're probably going to be talking about more, developed countries, the Western Europe, the US probably, is where we are comfortable going outside, where we are comfortable doing the advocating on the market, talking to the policymakers. So this helps us, and again, we are corporate, so we are trying to create the frameworks. This helps us to differentiate how we behave, how we apply our policies in different markets. There are some fundamentals, but there are differences. And me, originally I'm from Kazakhstan. I'm currently living in Czech Republic. So I lived through many challenges in my life, and I'm trying to embrace those for population of Microsoft. And Microsoft is like, we are more than 100,000 people. So the LGBTQI population of Microsoft is tens of thousands of people probably. So I'm trying to ensure that people based in Serbia, people based in Czech Republic, people based in Angola, they have the equal treatment and they can rely on Microsoft to be in the safe environment. So this is how we rationalize, and again, I'm referring again, we are corporate, so we're trying to create some models, we're trying to create some frameworks, how we help our people. And then if situation allows us, if environment is right, we are going a little bit above and beyond, and this is what we are doing here, supporting the Pride in Belgrade this year.
Thank you, George. You talk about feeling safe at work, something that you also, Anna, at Medtronic have worked with. You're the CEO for the Central and Eastern Europe, and you said to me you are a mission-driven company. And when we talked, you also said that all employees at Medtronic has, within their personal development goals, targets on inclusion and diversity, what they personally should do to make it better. Tell us about that. I found that fascinating. I haven't heard it before. I mean, it's a good step, I think. Tell us about that.
So first of all, once again, hello to everyone. It's really great to be here. And thank you for the invitation. As Medtronic, we aspire to be a global healthcare technology leader. And nearly 60 years ago, we worked out our mission on alleviating pain, restoring health, and extending life. And this is our north. This is our compass, and no matter what's happening, this is the direction we go to serve our customers and to bring the best products and solutions to our patients. And in the mission, we have 6 tenets, and tenet 5 is to recognize personal worth of our employees, which means we want to welcome and respect everyone as they are. And this is very important for us. And the second one, as a tenet 6 as well, is to be a good citizen to our communities. And this is as well kind of a compass that gives us openness and as well guidance for inclusion, diversity, and equity. And what, as our CEO says, global CEO, Jeff Marta, a diverse company is a better company. So this is just to give a context of what we do. And then you ask how we do it. So in fact, we have, as well, we work on the inclusion, diversity, and equity, I would say again, on 3 levels. Starting from the global level, where we have a global strategy for Pride, for Women's Network, for other communities, and as well on the global level, all senior leaders, vice presidents and other senior leaders are working on their strategies within their teams, how to work on the supporting diversity within teams. Then we have as well local communities, like we have EMEA of Pride, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and we have a lot of as well members coming here from around the world, in fact, from Medtronic. And so there is EMEA Pride, and then we have a local hubs, like we are in Belgrade, we're in Serbia, so I'm really proud that this event we can be hosting as our as well local Serbian team. And then there is a Central Eastern European hub, right, as well. So, and then another dimension to it as well, we want people, again, to contribute to work. So, of course, we are counting a lot on the involvement and passion of as well individuals contributing within those communities, but as well to make sure of it at a certain stage when we started already developing inclusion, diversity and equity, we've as well introduced goals, simply development goals. Mm-hmm. So everyone will feel that not only commercial right, revenue targets or educational, being with, interacting with the doctors, with key opinion leaders, but as well to create the community, to create inclusive and diverse environments. So everyone will be in the team welcomed equally and respected.
Thank you, Anna. A diverse company is a better company. I will bring that here. Now I'm turning to the screen. I hope the sound will work. Alex, you represent a brand that is quite obvious to be a partner to EuroPride. You're part of the community. You are for the community. So it's not so difficult to see the business case, But you have many other important initiatives that you work with at Grindr that you will tell us a little bit more about. Please.
Absolutely. So can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So hi, Alex Black, Head of Marketing at Grindr. I wanted to apologize in advance. I'm going to be speaking at about 2 times the speed I normally speak because Grindr does so much in this space that I'm going to have to go fast to get through even a portion of it. And the reason Grindr does so much in this space is firstly because myself and most, if not many, of the people I work with are members of the LGBTQ community. So it's a mission of personal importance for us to step up our corporate social responsibility to the community. But secondly, it's really just good business for Grindr to support the LGBTQ community, right? Creating a more open, inclusive, tolerant world for LGBTQ people where they're more comfortable to come out and live openly as themselves means more users downloading our app, means more ad revenue, means more subscriptions revenue. So it's kind of a no-brainer for Grindr, right? A better world for queer people is both personally important to us and it's good business for us. And while I think that's unique to Grindr, I think it applies to other companies as well, right? Any work that a company is doing to create a better world for queer people, you're going to be building authenticity and trust with those customers, and they're going to be more likely to engage with your brand and buy your products. And even more materially, right? Like thinking about a company like Ikea, queer people around the world have difficulty around economic stability, especially for trans and non-binary folks. And so thinking about Ikea specifically as an example, doing long-term work to bring opportunities to queer people to create a better world for them where they have more economic opportunity, that means they'll be more likely to be able to move out of their family home, get their own apartment, and guess what happens when they get their own apartment? They need new furniture, they need new dishware, they need new towels, and so IKEA has naturally generated business for itself. So, so getting into some specific work Grindr does, I wanted to start with talking about Grindr for Equality, which is the sub-brand we launched in 2012 with the goal of educating, activating, and funding the global LGBTQ community. It's really about using the power of and the reach of Grindr as a platform to connect LGBTQ people with vital local services, health services, sexual health services, and really about connecting NGO and grassroots organizations with queer people at the local level. So when we think about educating our users, we're partnering with organizations around the world on things like a sexual health resource center, which is available in multiple languages, a gender identity resource center available in multiple languages. We partnered with dozens of organizations in India to launch something called the All India LGBTQ Help Tool Finder. And what that was a localized resource for people in Indian languages to find LGBTQ-friendly sexual health, mental health, and legal services. And so for many of our Indian users, this was the first time they'd ever had access to those resources in their own language. You know, when we talk about activating the community through G-Free, you know, we're getting out the vote campaigns in both the US, around the world, supporting LGBT candidates, supporting legislation that furthers LGBTQ equality. And then, of course, funding, right? Annually, Grindr gives numerous grants to NGOs and LGBTQ serving organizations around the world, especially in the Middle East, North Africa region, which receives 5 times less funding than LGBTQ organizations in any other region of the world. So that's some of the great work Grindr for Equality does. On the marketing side, I know I probably only have like 30 seconds left here. I wanted to focus on some of the work we've done since the pandemic. So, you know, 2 of the hardest hit communities in the LGBTQ sphere affected by the pandemic, at least in the US and Western Europe, were nightlife performers and LGBTQ bars and clubs. So during the pandemic, we partnered with, you know, more than 36 drag queens, musicians, comedians, talent of all different types to produce live streams in the app for our users, you know, featuring their talent, their creativity. And so that's, you know, it's a win-win for us. We're creating engaging content for our users, and we're also putting money in the pockets of nightlife performers, comedians, et cetera, folks who couldn't be performing in live venues during the lockdown. And the other thing we were really excited to be able to do during the pandemic is, you know, LGBTQ bars and clubs, especially really historic ones in the US that have been open for decades, were really struggling during the pandemic with, you know, the lockdown, not having that business. So when things started to open back up, we launched a campaign called Pride Comeback, and we partnered with more than 30 bars in the US and Europe to buy them out for a night and treat our users to a night back out, kind of a welcome back out to LGBTQ nightlife during Pride. And for a lot of those venues, that was the biggest night of business they had during the entire pandemic. So yeah, it's kind of it's kind of a no-brainer at Grindr. A lot of our work so closely aligns with stepping up for the community that it's something that you know, we've been able to do a lot of, and that's just a very small fraction of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex. You will have the opportunity to speak more when we do questions, to come back. Now we'll turn to you, Maureen. You have been working for many, many years with diversity and inclusion, and you also give advice to companies and organizations to start working with this. And this is super, super interesting. Like, what do you say to them? What kind of advice do you give to business leaders that will just, you know, are about to start working with this?
Wow, yes, indeed. And this tends to get a very personal conversation. So kind of, I always adapt the conversation. But yes, in my role, I work together with lots of companies, lots of clients of IBM, but also throughout our ecosystem. That includes also public sector and our government representatives. And IBM has a very long track record on diversity and inclusion from the beginning of our company. So over 112 years, we've been a very progressive leader on diversity, on advocacy, and on innovation. It's really in the DNA of IBM. And that includes also LGBT topics. So already in 1987, we included sexual orientation in our non-discrimination policy letter. From 1996, we started paying equal benefits to same-gender partners, to anyone in our company. We added trans benefits and a transition framework from 2001. But we're still making progress. We're still trying to understand, to learn what more can we do? What haven't we done yet? What should we focus on? And our networks, our LGBT networks, are very essential in getting these insights. Working with non-governmental organizations, NGOs, also here in the region, has been very important to learn what we as a company can do, what the different communities are struggling with. We do that all around the world. We have networks all around the world. Our policies and strategies are global. So internally, people in IBM feel comfortable, safe, and welcomed. And we try to do as much as possible. But it's not just what we do inside the company. Really, what we do is not just for our employees and their families. It goes through our whole business ecosystem in working with clients, with partners, in working with Ikea or Microsoft in regions to learn what we can do. And I like the concept of sustainability, social sustainability, so not the environmental sustainability, but really social sustainability. What is the footprint of organizations in a marketplace? What are they doing beyond what they do internally? How do they build on the influence that they have, the contacts in marketplaces? Because, of course, we want our employees to be safe and our families feel safe and protected, not just in the office space, but also in the living space, in the society where they live and want to live. And we understand that in order to build our operation, our employees need this environment where they feel safe, they feel protected, they feel they have equal opportunities, they live at places where they can be free to be themselves. And as commercial companies, it is important to be able to attract those people wherever we have operations. So I think there's a clear link in the economic case and the human rights and the LGBT inclusion business case. Because in some regions we see that people, young people, educated people, they might want to leave. And we have issues attracting the people that we need, because we need smart, educated people. We need this diversity of thought in our organization to be successful in helping our customers. So we feel that in working together throughout our business ecosystem, we can do more. So our statement would be, we're stronger together. And for me, here now, it's especially, also emotional to be back. I've done some conferences 10, 12 years ago on the same topic. I spoke in 2018, and I see the increasing support of the companies, also of the government, and I see the importance of engaging in this conversation, in learning together, in being open to new ideas and new opinions. And for me and for us. I mean, I learn every day in my job, but I feel that we're together on this journey, and that diversity inclusion is about learning, being open, being understanding, and being respectful to each other. So that's why I'm so passionate on this topic, and I'm really delighted to be in this panel and sharing some ideas and insights. So thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. What can we do more? What more can we do? That is something to bring with you, to ask you every day, what can we do more? Or what more can we do? I got it wrong. Thank you. Now I'm turning to you, Tatjana Matic, Minister of Trade, Tourism and the Telecommunications. We have now listened to all of these companies that's doing brilliant things on diversity and inclusion of the LGBTI plus community. So I wonder a little bit how you, as part of the Serbian government, work to make it easier for companies to step forward and to do more and to be more inclusive.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this conference and for giving me the opportunity to talk about LGBT plus corporate social responsibility and to talk about the challenges that we all face. Inclusion of all groups of population, especially LGBT plus people, women, and all other marginalized individuals, is known to promote shared prosperity and economic development. If any group of people are denied participation in a society or economy due to their unique identities, their human rights are being violated. And what is more, for the government, those exclusions and violations are likely to have an adverse impact on a country's level or economic development, causing even more people to suffer the consequences. When I talk about the trade and tourism sector especially, Serbia could stand to gain from becoming more inclusive, but the social implications of such a shift are, of course, still critical here, and we can see it these days eventually, unfortunately. But while homophobia and ignorance unfortunately still exists, never in a modern history of Serbia LGBT plus people have been so visible and accepted as they are today. So in this situation, companies and corporate business sector can really do a lot, supporting them and empowering them. And I'm very happy what I have just heard in this panel that these companies are doing. So I know, of course, from my experience, especially my experience with IT companies, because of course, as a minister who is in charge for the sector of telecommunication and information society, I have deal a lot with these companies, and of course, in these past 2 years, a lot of with the trade sector. So I know that they struggle a lot, and I want to thank you for everything that you are doing in this sector. And I'm just saying that these companies really can do a lot in a field, and they are doing so. Congratulations and thank you for this, because only in this way, doing in a field, these small steps together, we can do a lot. The Ministry of Trade, of course, recognize, and telecommunication and tourism recognize the importance of this issue, and we are determined to empower all groups of population. What we especially do and what we have done in the past couple of years, we have empowered especially the women, and I think that what we have done for the women in the empowering them, we also could do in the future for LGBT population and all other marginalized individuals. By enhancing women's digital skills, for example, we encouraged female entrepreneurship, and one of our most recent projects involves developing digital skills for the women in rural areas. Why I'm mentioning this? Because in Serbia, one of the most, how to say, most, how to say, the women in the women in the rural areas are most sensitive population in our society. So they really need a big support. And we have done this program who have helped them a lot in empowering them, and they became more capable of dealing with the problems that they have in their communities. So this may be a good example how could we also with other marginalized groups, individuals work in the future. The ministry has allocated over 6,000 euros to support digital literacy and women's competencies since 2017, just for one example. And as I said, we are ready to support other marginalized individuals in the same way we have done this. In this regard, I would also encourage businesses and companies to be more inclusive when it comes to involving LGBT plus people in their work in Serbia, which I know that it isn't easy, but this is something that jointly we can do. To achieve this social change and to achieve this economic prosperity, we all must stand against discrimination and stereotypes. That's why I'm also today here. Therefore, I encourage companies and all other of my colleagues to embrace the benefits associated with greater LGBT plus inclusion in trade, tourism, and the economy, and to become ambassadors for mutual understanding and respect of universal human rights. In my deep conviction that we can work together to help create a more inclusive and respectful business environment, because especially in the sector of tourism, but also in the sector of trade, this will be very meaningful for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. So we should all be co-drivers, right? Corporates, politics, the civil society. I'm in favor of that. We heard such good examples now and all the success stories, but sometimes I think it's also more interesting to see what were the challenges on that road, you know, because there are many, and we have to overcome them, and we need also strategies to deal with that. So what was the biggest challenges to sort of, for you guys? Anyone would share challenges you had or things you had to overcome? You know, all this doesn't just happen. You need to work. It's not a day at the beach, you know, working with human rights progress.
So in fact, I think the first step of a challenge is to you create or you have a goal, right? Strategic goal, and then the question is how it remains, how long it remains on the level of strategy, and when it really becomes start to live, right? So, and then when it starts to live, then of course you have allies, or you have people who are adopting fast or who were waiting for it, and these people, these team members, will be joining very fast. But again, like we have in EuroPride, when we were working on our strategy, in fact, when we look at the number of countries we have in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, so we have very, very diverse environments and political settings, as you may imagine, right? So Western Europe is much faster advancing with the Pride, with the support of LGBTQ+. But looking only in Central Eastern Europe, right? We know we've heard about the legislation in Hungary. We had issues as well in Poland, right? So the challenges are how to activate people. So, for example, when you have an organization of a few hundred employees, let's say in Poland, so how do you, for example, encourage a team to come to a Pride parade? Simply. So how to stand out from the crowd, from the whole organization, invite and engage team members. So who will be brave to raise a hand, to join the community? So again, so this would be the challenges we're facing. So another challenge is, but I think slowly, that's why I think it's so critical to involve as well single people. So the engagement will come from the employees on the ground, and they will create as well. So there is a global strategy, and then there is movement as well in the local organizations. So it will all link and create then eventually a community. And maybe I'll share a story, anonymous story of an employee, and it was so heartwarming for me to hear. So they said, you know why it's worth, why I'm engaged in supporting LGBTQ community, and why I'm supporting or giving this extra job, as we were, George, right? Right, because it's an extra job, in fact, right? To be engaged, to dedicate your voluntary time. They said that before, when I was working, in fact, I was in the office and I heard people talking about their families or what they do in the afternoon, and I was silent. And today, few years later, when we work, when we emphasize, when we create this much more friendly, diverse environment, for the first time, I will say I'm a happy father of kids. I have a great family, and I'm not afraid. And this is what's changing. It's changed my life. So we made me committed to be in Medtronic, to work here. So these were kind of the small examples of the challenges I would like to share.
Thank you.
Can I say a few words?
You
as
can.
well? Just some things is echo. I think from our Ikea side, it's also about involvement and engagement. And the challenge is to be brave and bold and really stand out and sometimes face some of the things that maybe you don't like to face. But in another way, it's a lot about encouragement of the people. And what I said before around Serbia journey, when it was a bit of the flag was stolen, the rainbow flag, and there was things that was, but then how people was really thinking about this encouragement and powerful of our statement and being on that. I think this is one of the challenges that they face, that we engage with the many and understand why and what we want to do. And then also to also the challenge, or not a challenge, it's more like today. I just want to also take this possibility to say thank you, that it's encouraging already, and it takes these challenges, what you say about different stories, that how we can overcome them together, and thank you for this as well.
If I can maybe just on the same line to add, I think the topic of being open in the workplace, it's kind of underestimated. We tend to talk about bigger things like how we change the world, but this is where it starts. If you are free to say, hey, I'm gay, I have a partner, I'm not afraid to have a picture of my partner on my table, which is still a taboo in many, many cultures, countries. This is where we probably need to start. And that resonated with me a lot. Like a few months ago, I was at a conference in Prague. It's called Pride Business Forum, where businesses are talking about the diversity. And the recurring theme across everyone was, how can we enable and support our employees that they feel comfortable coming out? We don't want them to come out, but we want them to know that they are safe and they are respected for what they do. And another big thing there is the leadership support. Although there are people who are eager to change something, but in this context, in our environment, it's extremely important that leaders of the organizations do pay attention to that. There is an executive sponsor or someone at the top of the organization who says, yes, this is important, yes, we spend time. And I wanted actually to thank everyone on this panel to do that great job, to enable our employees to do what they are.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking of you now. If you want to say something. Leadership matters, right?
Well, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think the challenge is to make the connection between the importance of diversity, inclusion, and your business. And leverage the personal story and examples of how indeed being open, being out, not having to hide anything will enhance the business. And this is not just for LGBT people. We sometimes might be a bit of the canary in the mine, but often if LGBT people can come out and be open, others feel as well. But I just wanted to give the example of where equality and inclusion, it's not like pie. It's not like if I have more, you have less. It's the other way around. If you have more, I have more. And I think even in in society, that understanding how we all benefit from being more inclusive, I think that's important to stress.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Can I add on that? Around this, business also linked to this. We really believe in Ikea that it's going hand in hand. If you talk about Ikea business in Serbia, for example, taking a lot of things in the lead for diversity and inclusion strategy, and we are growing double digits. We engage with our customers. It's a lot around brand emotion. It's there.
Thank you.
If I can add something.
Please do.
Yeah, I think your original question around, what are the challenges of stepping up? And I think a lot of folks have talked about challenges internally. And obviously, I think that's been less of a problem for us at Grindr. Very open, inclusive workplace. Most of us are queer, and people have come out as trans, gay, non-binary, and company all-hand meetings. It happens all the time. So less of a problem for us there. But I think thinking a bit more externally, building authenticity and trust with the LGBTQ community is a challenge that Grindr has faced. And I know that if Grindr has faced it, all these other companies are facing it even more because, you know, their missions are less directly aligned to supporting the LGBTQ community. And so I think, you know, how to address that challenge is really twofold. It's having queer people at the table in the initiatives and business decisions, and not just in a minor way. I'm not talking about queer interns or queer junior employees. I'm talking about queer execs, queer CEOs, queer leaders, right? And I think the other way is to make sure that your efforts are year-round and not just Pride Month. You know, people in the community are they're wary of pinkwashing. They're sort of suspicious sometimes of brands who only show up for the community during June or during the summer Pride season. So I think a way to address that challenge of building that trust and authenticity with the community is to make sure your efforts are year-round and not just during June.
And
thank you, Alex. Yes, please.
Well, I would just like to say that the biggest challenge for the society is to fight the prejudice. So if we want to become a truly tolerant and free society, we need to fight the prejudice. And when we indeed succeed in fighting the prejudice, then we are becoming inclusive, and then we are really becoming a freely society. So when we accept LGBT plus population and all, when we are involving them in our society, and this really means that we are becoming more freely a society and indeed inclusive. So this kind of fight is in fact for more freedom for the whole society, not only for this population. And this is why this fight is so important, and this is why we all need to be involved. So I think for us right now, the biggest challenge for the government and for the society in all was fighting the prejudice.
And
Thank
Anna,
you.
I think I have as well, I would like to share one more example, very pragmatic, where we had a bit even to step back to go forward, right? So I think with the Central Eastern European hub of the Pride, of support for LGBTQ plus community, so we were really active, intensively working. And suddenly we've noticed that in fact not all the countries within our kind of sub-region are involving, or even we saw resistance from employees, from the leaders. And so in fact we had to step back and put it more on under the umbrella of inclusion, diversity and equity, under which we currently have Pride, we have Women's Network, we have men advocating equity. We have as well Together We Care, so this is for society, this is an ecological initiative. So in fact we had to stay back, and then we say, okay, so we understand, so we advised everyone to pick whatever they prefer, and you're free to choose. Right, so I think this was our challenge, and this was our experience we had, where we had to step back, but in fact we went much faster. We're going now much faster forward.
Thank you. I think you're all on to many important things here. As you said, Alex, that you also speak about the internal. The internal is very important, but also the external, what kind of effects that could have to fight prejudice, and as you say, through, I mean, given leverage to these questions by lending out your brands, but not, you know, having that balance between pinkwashing and not. It's interesting. I was supposed to, I have many questions, but also I think it's time for us to hear if the audience have anything that they would like to ask. I see there, yes, please. Is there a microphone, or do we speak loud? We can.
Okay. I was wondering what the companies are doing for their trans employees, transgender employees, and more importantly for trans employment, because you may already have some transgender employees, but there may be transgender people out there who might not have the same opportunities as other people. So what you're doing, thank you. What you're doing about that, like increasing your transgender employment. Thank you.
Anyone ready?
I can take that one. Yes, supporting trans employees or people that want to transition has been a key part of our LGBT efforts in the last decades. We also see that within the LGBTIQ+ community, often the trans community faces the most difficult circumstances, whether legally or societal. Many get killed. Many haven't access to professional jobs. We had an employee who said that he would probably have committed suicide hadn't we supported him in the transition, where he first lost all his friends and his family and his job, and then afterwards, when he came back as a woman, actually got new friends and his family back and a professional career. So we have a global transition framework where we allow people to transition. We make sure that we provide them health benefits and others. Interestingly, in times of COVID, increasing numbers of people in our company have transitioned. We also have people that come to work for us because they know that they can transition at us. But another example which I'm really proud of is that the manager of the employee in case, that's part of the transition role model with different roles of responsibility, has to support and has to provide education to this person transitioning, because in our view, it's not just the person who is transitioning, the whole environment around this person is transitioning as well. And this shouldn't be the person that would have to do that. If you want to, the person wants to, fine. But the responsibility lies with the manager that educates the whole circle around it, including customers. So we had this case in France where there was a fantastic software specialist who was working with the major banks, wanted to transition. And it took a while longer because of the skin and other treatments. So after 1.5 years, the person was going back to the customer, and the customer said, "Oh, but we don't think that works in our environment. We don't want a trans person coming to work with us. Do you have anyone else?" And then we thought, okay, we've seen this situation in Japan where they ask, please don't send a woman, send a man. And it's in our contract that we can decide who we'll send. But we engaged in the conversation. And our executive sponsor for the LGBT community met with the CEO of this big financial institution in France. And he said, actually, we have a problem. Our suicide rates are high. We're not as inclusive. Could you explain a little bit more? And they did. And we helped them. In the end, long story short, they have now a transition model. And in that organization, people have transitioned. And I'm very proud of that story and of the leadership of those two people making a difference. So I think we can learn from each other. And we see in society there's additional threats. We see that also in the US. We see threats not just for our employees, but also for employees that have trans children. So I think we need to learn more, understand a little bit more, and not just about trans, but also about intersex people, which is like 1.72% of the human population. And I think we can drive lots of improvements together. From the employer perspective, from the medical perspective, from the legal perspective. And I think ILGA does a really good job in providing insights in the situation of trans people, and every company can access those reports and the situation, understand a little bit more. And my last advice is work with trans organizations to learn what is important to them.
I can add something there.
Please do.
Yeah, I think another really critical way to attract and retain trans employees is to support them in their health care journey. Obviously, LGBTQ people face more health care challenges than non, and specifically trans people face unique healthcare challenges that some company benefits aren't always set up or prepared to address or offer. So I think providing more holistic and inclusive healthcare options for trans employees, things focusing on gender affirmation assistance, et cetera, is really important, and that's something that we've worked really hard on at Grindr. And I hope a lot of other companies follow suit in providing better benefits, medical benefits for their trans employees.
Thank you. Questions? Any more? I can see right there. Super.
Okay, yeah, I got it on. Thank you. My name is Lena Lovedal, and I'm a human rights lawyer. I'm also speaking tomorrow here at 3 o'clock, so this is somewhat related. From human rights research, we know that proactive efforts is what is really getting you there in terms of equality. You've touched upon it separately. I was particularly fascinated with the Microsoft, because I really recognized a classical human rights approach with like formal equality and social support, and then the transformative equality addressing cultural issues and stereotypes, etc., in your approach. So that was quite impressive. My question for you is, you've touched upon knowledge, the importance of that. You've touched upon the carrot of what you can gain, but we need a stick often through law, through legal duties. What role do you think the law should play in business duties for corporations in terms of working for equality? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'll probably start, although I'm not an expert in law or legislation, but this is something what we discussed with Anna, that the big corporations or small corporations putting an effort on promoting the diversity agenda are actually doing an enormous job making it popular and making it known. And I'm now speaking maybe even more as the marketing professional. When we do a post about Microsoft supporting Pride, or Microsoft going for the legislation change in the country, or an employee sharing their story about them being gay or transgender person, and we publish that on our Facebook page, which will have millions of views daily, probably none of the NGO organization or none of the activists can have that big reach. I'm not trying to take a credit for that, but just changing the perspective a little bit and seeing what we are doing in the way of promoting the diversity agenda from the engines we have, from the instruments we actually own or we invest as the marketing organization, that might have an enormous impact. And when Microsoft or Ikea or any other organization is going on the Pride, is openly sharing the rainbow flag on their social handles or on any external event, that lends a message in the people's minds, that makes sure that people start thinking a little bit differently. That's probably not a marginal change. It doesn't really change the world right now. But what I always think that we do have that impact, and maybe it's not enough, it's never enough. There is a long road to go. But when companies are doing that conscious effort on investing into the education, into the promotion, in making sure that people understand why we do that, how it aligns with our values, and then how it translates in our products. What we do at Microsoft, every year we're trying to add the LGBTQI messaging in our product lineup. This year we did the controllers for Xbox, which are branded under the Pride, and that's winning the hearts and minds of people. You don't have to be a gay person to have that controller, but buying that controller, you are sharing it with your friends, you're sending the signal that, hey, I'm fine, I'm good with that. So again, I'm probably not answering directly your question on what we do in the policy. We probably don't do much, we can do more. I admit that. But I think what we are doing from this perspective, from the business perspective where we actually are, it's worth spending a bit of time trying to see what is the impact there. And I think it's actually big. Thanks.
Anyone else?
So maybe I will add to it. So it's true on the policy, I think it's a bit limited, but we do in the countries where we face more challenges. So we ally with other companies. So at least we are kind of standing out from the crowd, from the general perception or general feelings. At least our employees may feel good, but then as well we create allies with other companies in those countries. So we grow the support, we grow this positive, inclusive environment.
Yeah, I also can add it's about engaging and sharing the examples, like you say now, and you say now about what you do, and encourage ourselves, also our employees, to stand out and to make a difference. And maybe it's small steps, but small steps matters.
Yes. Do you want to? Yeah, please.
Yeah, and just quickly, I think the legal people play a vital role. I sometimes hear, oh, it's illegal to be gay or lesbian here in this country, in this region. Well, actually, it's not. There may be certain sodomy laws, for example, but it doesn't prevent you from hiring gays or lesbians in the working environment, for example. Second, the legal people and or higher courts have ruled in favor of LGBT legislation. A lot. We saw that a lot lately when politicians couldn't adapt the legislation, the legal entities provided for that. But also for legislation, I think we, along with other organizations, have often signed open letters to legislators in support of changes of legislation, for example, around equal marriage or family law. So I think companies can be very visible in making clear how important it is for their employees to have this legal, equal treatment. So I think we have to collaborate probably even more on those topics. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, very important question. Also that we could do more together, I think. Companies backing up policy change is important. This has also, you create an engagement with many people that maybe others or we don't reach otherwise. So should we have one more before? Yes, please, there.
Yeah, okay, this one's working, thanks. Hi, my name is Alessandro, and I'm the EME Advocacy and Community Lead for the Pride ERG at Dell Technologies. I'd like first to share a couple of things that work very well in our company. First one is employees can volunteer in their working hours, and while they do, they accumulate hours, and if they do a certain amount of hours, they get a voucher for the company that can be given in the form of money to associations. And the second one is having executive sponsors for each chapter and having them included in each activity, or at least the most important ones we organize, because they give a sense of legitimation to everything we do. Back to the question. I'd like to know from your point of view, to have some suggestions, because what I'm struggling for is that everything, especially in, I can empathize with Microsoft and IBM, American companies, I don't know if Medtronic is based in the United States as well, seems to be centralized at the least in the United States. So global policies, most of the things are decided there. And I find it very, very difficult to make them engage differently with other regions, whether it's obtaining budgets for joining conferences or organizing activities. It's, you know it better than me, a nightmare, or perhaps it's just our company. So I'd like to have your feedback on this aspect. Thank you.
So it's a very good point, actually. This is what I was referring to, a global strategy or companies who, again, have environment is, in the US is a bit different than we are facing probably in Europe. But at least Medtronic experience is that you need to have people who are engaged, so leaders who are engaged and who walk the talk. So, for example, for my personal, when you ask me experience, I'm a sponsor of EMEA Pride, but as well, I'm taking a flag or I'm dressing up for the parade in Warsaw and I'm going with the employees, right? I'm putting a t-shirt and I'm there with them. So I think to make it live, you need to really walk the talk. And you cannot be just sponsor on the PowerPoint slide on the presentation, but you really need to do it and commit to it. So I think this is a key to success, and I think I'm really proud that in 2 years' time we have now over 1,000 members of EMEA Pride in Medtronic across Europe, which in fact we've started from zero, right? So I think, but it takes a courage, it takes a passion, it takes time. And as well, it's an effort and being bold to stand up and just carry the flag, right? And look for more flags around you.
Thank you. Time flies. Maybe we can do one more question. Yes. Who is? Yeah, okay. Please.
Yes. Okay, hi. So, it's not just a question, I think it's more of a statement. So my name is Yoros Papadimitriou, I'm a psychologist, I come from Greece, and I've been working also in the field of DI over the past couple of years, and I think that's something that is not mentioned enough, is about how, let's talk about queer employees currently, right? How also queer employees need to be protected from being exploited from their companies so that their experience, like, what I want to say is that I've been approached by many companies being like, oh, you're an open queer activist, why don't you come and help us understand the context, help us understand the community, you know, why don't you be the voice of the people we're trying to serve? And when the question comes like, am I gonna be compensated for that? Like I have experience on my back of being traumatized, of, you know, educating myself, on speaking on the community, what do you offer me as a company or like as a ministry to actually bring my experience to the field? And many of them are like, but you know, you're an activist, you're gonna do it for your community, you need to be proud, you're gonna create another amazing environment for your other queer colleagues, etc., to speak. And that's why I know a lot of people are thinking not just about like pinkwashing, as it was mentioned before, but I know that for a fact that a lot of queer people are not gonna approach these companies because they know that it might be approached by them and pretty much their experience is gonna be exploited in that way, and maybe even get more traumatized into that process of that new age diversity, equality, and inclusion that those companies want to follow over the past years. So I wanted to make a statement that please compensate employees for their experience, no matter if we're talking about queer employees of color. Like after Black Lives Matter, we had so many companies trying to figure out which one will be the best black employee or like the person of color employee of the year that's gonna speak about racial issues. Currently, you know, also in the United States, I know it's huge. So that's a statement. Please compensate your employees appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Word, I guess. Did you want to comment fast before we round up?
Yeah, quickly. I think you're totally right. Companies should really acknowledge the efforts and time and effort people put into it. But it's also the other side, right? Think about how you can help your company, how you can contribute and describe to them the value that you bring to the company. And that's, I think, it's works both sides. So great. Thank you for the point.
Thank you, Maureen. So finally now, before we finish off this panel and go back to our respective jobs and organizations, and I want to just think some half minute or 1 minute even, like what could I do? What could we do? What can I take with me? And for inspiration for that, I will ask you now before of your best tips. You will get only like 30 seconds or one minute, like how to start. How could I start? Or how could I take the next step in my organization to be better? Who wants to start? You can start.
Okay. Yes, there is three things. One is about involvement and engagement. The second thing is about invite civil societies, and the third thing is keep the dialogue and togetherness. On the first one is really engage your co-workers and involve them on why and what. Invite the NGO's competence on the second one, and then keep this dialogue. Thank you for this, because I think it's very encouraging.
Thank you.
I
George,
can maybe
wanna go?
do second one. So I think for organizations which are not there yet, if you're just thinking about your diversity agenda, LGBTQI agenda, make sure that there is a strong leader supporting that. I strongly believe in our region that's very important, that somebody senior enough is saying, yes, this is important, we go there. However, if you're already in the game, if you're doing a great job, just learn from others as we do today. I personally learned some very, very cool things today, which we're probably going to discuss and reapply. So keep learning. That's a never-ending process.
Thank you. Maybe I'm looking at the screen here. Alex, do you want to go?
Sure, yeah. I would just say be curious, be prepared to learn from your queer colleagues and contacts, and be prepared to change your mind. You know, understand that you may have internal biases that you are blind to, and that doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that you have opportunity to grow, and that's great.
So then maybe I go. For me, it's, I would say, to have your eyes, ears, and heart open, and welcome with equity and respect. And I think this is that would be my recipe.
Thank you.
And I want to add, it's wonderful what companies do, what organizations, foundations, NGOs do, what governments do, but it's often not those organizations, right? It's the people in there. And it can be you. So really think about how we can each contribute to driving progress, and don't underestimate the effect that you might have in your organization and in the larger cause.
Thank you.
Government has to continue its dialogue with the public, private sector, with the civil society, and it has to think about the legal context of it. So we have to keep our inclusive policy and fight the prejudice.
Thank you. So now we get some good examples to take home and start doing the corporate activism, right? And also for all of us, not only the companies, but also for us as civil society, to start talking to these guys and take all this good advice and bring them as your business case coming to ask for support. And for politicians, leadership matters. I think we all agree on that one. This panel was to explore what we can do more so that people, companies can step forward and do more. And I think we touched upon some things, but I think the conversation, as you said, needs to be ongoing. But I hope you got many good tips today, and bring them with you and do something about it, not just think about it. So thank you to all of you in the panel, Tatjana, Marjane, Ekaterina, Alex, George, sorry, and Anna, for sharing. It's very important that you do, and so open-heartedly. Thank you very much.